Hello, my name is METİN Arıdaşır. This is 168th part of explanation of my theory. According to accepted physics theories, as a result of absorption, an electron gains energy, and as a result of emission, an electron loses energy. Whereas, on the contrary, accepted physics theories, according to my theory and my formulas, an absorption process of electron makes an electron drop its energy, and an emission process of electron makes electron increase its energy. Before explaining how do these processes actualize, I will remind you some of my thoughts that I told you before. 2. Emission spectral lines are results of interaction between free electron motion forms and proton-bound electron motion forms in an atom. For instance, right side free electron motion form, which produces and propagates successive waves, and left side a proton-bound electron motion form. It cannot produce and propagate successive waves. It can only produce and pour out single wave pulse under the influence of free electron motion forms successive waves. Yes. 3. Without a free electron motion forms successive waves effect, a proton-bound electron motion form in an atom can never produce an emission line pulse. Yes. Yes. 4. There are two types of light. A. Free electron motion forms, intertwined ring-shaped spherical successive waves interconnecting in a row up to the first ring-shaped spherical motion cycle's motion axis. All continuous spectrum source is this type of light. Again, there are two types of light. A. Free electron motion forms successive waves. B. Single wave pulse of proton-bound electron motion form. Again, there are two types of light. A. Free electron motion forms, intertwined ring-shaped spherical successive waves interconnecting in a row up to the first ring-shaped spherical motion cycle's motion axis. B. Single wave pulse of proton-bound electron motion form. All spectral emission line source, in other words, characteristic line spectra source is this type of light. A proton-bound electron motion form can never produce successive waves. It is a ring-shaped spherical single motion cycle that made joint motion with protons constituent electron-like motion forms. Five. As a proton-bound electron motion form, it always stays at first cycle, regardless expanding by the effect of a successive wave of an free electron motion form or shrinking. This means its linear velocity is always 1,884,000 km per second. Remember my former videos. Whether it enlarges here under the successive waves of free electron motion form, under this effect, enlarge here its initial position, initial situation, okay? When this is proton-bound electron motion form, say helium atom, smallest electron motion form, red one, proton, ionized, say, greater electron motion form, ionized, say, this is greater electron motion form, now ionized, and it is free, and it produces and propagates successive waves, say. Okay, not yet, not arrive. It not arrives here, proton-bound electron motion form, yet. Okay, it is initial wavelength, lambda EI, is 22.8 nanometer, okay? And its point energy is 87.1491 10 to the minus 19 joule, or kilogram meter per second square. I remember, if I remember, yes. Yes, wait a moment. Whether it enlarges under the influence of successive waves of free electron motion forms or shrinks when successive waves vanish, a proton-bound electron motion form always stays at its first cycle motion and is equal 1. Whether it's in initial or enlarged situation. First cycle and linear velocity is the same for two different situations of proton-bound electron motion form and is equal 1. Remember my former video and my former formulas. Linear velocity for first cycle of an electron motion form is 1,884,000 km per second. But for successive waves of free electron motion form, for each successive wave, linear velocity as much squared wave number of successive waves, not squared, I'm so sorry, multiple of wave number, okay? For instance, this is free electron motion form successive wave and is equal 1, first cycle, second cycle, this is 1,884,000 linear velocity, kilometer per second. Second successive wave, 2 multiplied by 1,884,000 kilometer, and third one, 3 multiplied by 1,884,000 kilometer per second, and so on. Okay. Yes. I advise you to watch my former videos step by step. Yes. Yes, whereas each successive wave's linear velocities of a free electron motion form increases as much multiple of their wave numbers as. Therefore, a proton-bound electron motion form reacts to an effective successive wave of free electron motion form by expanding its radius, wavelength size, at the rate of squared wave number of effective successive wave without changing its first cycle linear velocity at 1,884,000 km per second. Like this. Fourth successive wave of a free electron motion form now affect from its joint motion axis electron motion form, and this successive wave make this electron motion form enlarge at the square rate of wave number, at the rate of its squared wave number. This electron motion form's wavelength size enlarged under the influence of free electron motion forms. Say fourth successive wave of free electron motion form affected this 22.8 initial wavelength in balance in an atom, helium. In balance wavelength electron enlarged now, n squared multiplied by initial wavelength is equal to now 364.8 nanometer. Okay, enlarged. Former one, not enlarged yet. Its point energy was 87.1491. Now, this is old situation. Now, enlarged situation, its point energy is 5.4468 10 to the minus 19 joule. Former energy, point energy, when it was small, 87.1491 10 to the minus 19 joule. Okay. Here, this is absorption process. Now, this electron expanded by the effect of successive wave of free electron motion form. This is absorption process. And now, in absorption process, we see what? Point energy of electron motion form decreases. Okay. On the contrary of accepted physics theories. Decreases to 5.4468 10 to the minus 19 joule. Point energy dropped. Yes. We will go on. I want to explain clearly. I will try. Yes. Therefore, a proton-bound electron motion form reacts to an effective successive wave of free electron motion form by expanding its radius wavelength size at the rate of squared wave number of effective successive wave without changing its first cycle linear velocity at 1,884,000 km per second. This means by expanding by the effect of successive wave of a free electron motion form, a proton-bound electron motion form loses its point energy at the rate of squared wave number of the effective successive wave. And when the effective successive wave vanish in, for instance here, completely, maybe vanish partly, okay? My formulations and my theory is valid for this situation also, this case also, okay? Wave vanish completely, proton-bound electron motion form shrinks to its initial imbalance wavelength size, like this. Third step here. When free electron motion forms successive waves vanish, it shrinks again its initial situation, shrunken situation, expanded situation, okay? From expanded situation to shrunken situation. While shrinking, it produces and push out a single wave pulse, okay? Now, at this shrunken situation, it is again 22.8 nanometer wavelength size, and its point energy, shrunken situation point energy is what? 87.1491 10 to the minus 19 joule or kilogram meter square per second square, I guess. Okay. Its point energy, shrunken situation point energy, this is important, and expanded situation point energy of electron motion form. Okay. Now, yes. And when the effective successive wave vanish completely, proton-bound electron motion form shrinks to its initial imbalance wavelength size. This means by shrinking when vanishing of the effective successive wave, proton-bound electron motion form gains as much rest of squared wave number as energy. While doing this, while shrinking, it pour out and push out a single wave pulse, which represented by a single spectral emission line at a certain wavelength. As a spectral emission light, a single wave pulse energy is equal to difference between in shrunken situation point energy and in expanded situation point energy of a proton-bound electron motion form. And the corresponding spectral line indicates a representative wavelength of this energy. Yes. For example, difference between 87.14 I'm sorry, 1491, 10 to the minus 19 joule. And 5.4468 10 to the minus 19 joule is equal to 81.7023 10 to the minus 19 joule. Okay. And its corresponding wavelength is 24.3077 nanometer. It corresponds a line of helium and is equal to 1 between n is equal to 1 and between n is equal to 4. Here, according to my theorem and my formulas, n represents wave number of free electron motion forms successive waves. Okay, don't confuse with accepted physics principle quantum number. This wave number is nothing to do with quantum mechanics or accepted physics theories principle quantum number. Okay, yes, this is, I guess, important also. By the way, I want to remind you again, as I told you before, if there were no free electron motion forms in meta-sensation perception matter, and if there were only proton-bound electron motion forms in meta-sensation perception matter, in spite of going on the single cyclical motion of proton-bound electron motion forms in their initial wavelength sizes, in spite of going on of these type motions of meta-sensation perception matter, there wouldn't be spectral lines, there wouldn't be any kinds of light, there wouldn't be continuous spectrums and blackbody radiations, there wouldn't be heat and temperature, there wouldn't be gravity and attraction, there wouldn't be subjective reality that we share it with all living species, perhaps with all the things. In short,